So we are going to continue with today's session, dear students, with the data preparation aspects that we have discussed yesterday. We will also have a session tomorrow. And I would request all of you to kindly see that you are able to use Excel as well as able to, if not everybody, a few of you can download or at least see on YouTube. I will send across certain instructional video links about usage of SPSS, Statistical Package for Social Sciences. And we will, I will show you tomorrow how to use that in terms of data entry, how and where would you find the instructions to perform the different types of multivariate analysis that we are looking at, factor, cluster, discriminant logic, and all that. All right, so we will start with data preparation process, which we had looked at yesterday. So this is the data preparation process that you can see on the screen, which is to preliminary prepare a plan for data analysis, checking the questionnaire, editing, coding, transcribing, cleaning the data if required, and you try to statistically adjust the data and select the data analysis strategy. So we have discussed yesterday till editing and coding, and once one of the the Excel sheets, I will show it to you, if not today, tomorrow's class, and I will show you how you need to deal with any non-response that has happened in any of the fields, if there is any. Otherwise, I will use one of the dummy files that I have, or the data collected from some other survey that I showed you yesterday. We will use such a sheet, and we will see that if there is any kind of non-response, missing response, how do you code that aspect also. And as you have seen before, that the process of accounting for non-responses, missing responses, when dealing with the data or preparing the data for analysis is part of editing. Okay, so the editing of data is how you examine the collected raw data that you have found from the survey or out of the outcome of collection of the responses. And we said editing can be of two kinds. One is field editing and one is central editing. So one could be field editing, which is real time. We can process it as you receive the responses. Central editing would be something to do with editing the responses that you receive at a central location, where the researcher gets all the responses from different locations, different centers, where all the questionnaire would have been administered. And coding is something that can be done prior to the administration of the questionnaire for collecting response. Coding can be done by the researcher, and a coding sheet needs to be maintained, which will indicate the different numerals or symbols that are actually assigned to answers or response categories. And yesterday I showed you the example of how in an Excel sheet itself, for the different questions that would be there in a questionnaire, you can assign different numbers to different categories. Like if it is gender, male and female, male can be assigned a number of 1, female can be assigned a number of 2, and if you talk about a third, say a transgender, then number 3, and like this. So there can be 3 broad categories for your gender. But if it's something to do with age, so you could have 4 or 5 categories, in case you are categorizing, categorically collecting the data and not the actual age of a person. So if you have 4 or 5 categories of age, then each category can be given a number. So supposing there are 5 categories of age, so number 1 to 5 can be used for coding. So this coding can be done prior to the administering the questionnaire for the final survey. So this coding helps in terms of ensuring that you're able to get the data and put the responses into some meaningful form, which can subsequently be fed into a analytical software for analysis. So like I was telling you, SPSS, which is one of the most commonly used statistical tool or analytical tool for analysis, uses the combination of numbers, but you can define the scales, whether it is interval, ordinal, categorical. So that I will show it to you tomorrow when I show you a snapshot of how SPSS looks like or how it is done. Now, I do understand, and it is possible because you are all away from the campus and you may not have the software requirements to deal with it, but I will ensure that whatever I am going to show in the class, as it gets recorded, it will be there for your future reference. Plus, I will share certain videos and all, which you can keep with you, so that once when you require it and you're either back to the campus or you need it and you have access to the version of the software, while during the program of MBA or beyond when you work, you can always use these references to use SPSS for your analysis in any of your future research assignment work. All right, be it for dissertation or summer internship or even beyond in your work area. So the next thing which is important after coding is to understand the classification. So most of the research studies actually, result in a large volume of raw data, which must be reduced into certain groups, certain common groups or homogeneous groups, in order to get some meaningful relationships out of it. So classification is very much essential because you need to understand how you can classify different groups of responses that you've received in the raw data. And this fact necessitates that classification of data happens to be the process of arranging data in groups or classes based on some common characteristic, right? It could be based on either some agreement process, or it could be based on some groups of definitions of characteristics. So we will look at how we can deal with the classification of the data in similar formats, right? So what you need to do is, the next step is to ensure that you are able to do a thorough checking of the questionnaire. And like I told you that before any final survey is actually administered or a questionnaire is administered, normally a pre-testing happens, and the input from the pre-testing is used to get inputs in order to fine-tune, modify, edit, and make the questionnaire much more effectively reliable and valid for usage in the field. So questionnaire returned from the field may be unacceptable for various reasons. So once you are administering it, even after the final version of the questionnaire has been used, once you are using it in the field, there can be certain things that you notice which comes out of the questionnaire coming back after being used on the field. What are some of the things? Some of the things that you might see is that parts of the questionnaire may be incomplete. So people may have answered few of the questions that you have asked, and they may not have answered many of the other questions. Second point, the pattern of responses may indicate that the respondent did not understand or follow the instructions. All right, so they could have either not ticked anything, ticked everything that was there, or they would not have followed the instructions. So some way you can understand that the person who answered a particular questionnaire may not have understood the instructions per se. So that is why it's very important for questionnaires to completely have instructions that people can understand. Now, how do you ensure that these instructions can be understandable? That is why the pre-testing is done on smaller samples of people representative of the population of interest where the main survey will be conducted. So if you conduct all that, you need to be very sure that at the pre-testing stage, you're actually able to take the inputs of people, feedback of people, to ensure that you are getting the right kinds of views, ideas, opinions, perception of respondents regarding how they feel, think, and act on your questionnaire. Can they understand it? Do they feel it is good? Do they feel it is long? Do they feel tired answering the questionnaire from the beginning to the end? Do you feel that there is a fatigue creeping in, or do you feel that people are feeling uncomfortable answering certain questions? These are things which you need to check during the pre-testing stage. But despite that, even if you have got all those inputs, and even if you have corrected all those things, there is still a possibility that when you administer the questionnaire in a main survey, still there will be some people who still might not respond, might answer few, may not answer some of the questions, may not be answering in the manner that you wanted them to answer, giving you the understanding that perhaps they did not understand the instructions well. So all of these things are there. So what you need to do while checking the questionnaires when they return from the field after you have administered it, which is right now what all of you are doing, like you have used a Google form, or you have used a e-questionnaire developed on SurveyMonkey, and you have given it out to people to respond, and the answers have come in, and the answers have got stored in an Excel sheet or a Google sheet, right? So you can check which of the questions people answered and which they did not answer. Second is the pattern of responses to indicate whether people understood the instruction or not, if you have given any instructions as such, because you had hardly 10 questions to develop as part of the main activity. So it is possible that the instructions were pretty clear in terms of just answering all the questions, right? The third point to check is if there is any kind of variance. So do the responses show little variance in terms of the responses coming in? You need to also check whether one or few more pages are missing. This typically happens when you are having a printed questionnaire. So if some of the pages which are coming back to you, they are not there. Or for example, even if you have used a e-questionnaire and there are 3 or 4 parts of the questionnaire, so is it that few questions in a certain part of the questionnaire has not been answered? These are few things to check. It is not that every time you will have these kind of symptoms or this kind of incidences, but these are kind of precautionary issues that I'm highlighting to all of you, so that going forward in your real life during internship or during any dissertation or when you're actually working with any research project, these are things that you must keep in mind, because not necessarily always, despite our technological advances, it is not necessary that at all given points in the future you will always use a e-questionnaire. There is a possibility that you are using a e-copy questionnaire along with a printed version. All right. Please, whoever is Tejas, request you to kindly mute, please. Thank you. So these are things that you need to check. So the questionnaire, the next thing what you need to check is whether the questionnaire is received after the pre-established cutoff date. So if you've given some kind of a cutoff date and people have responded after that, so the decision should be whether you should be using the questionnaire responses after that date or not, right? So those could be invalid responses and all of that. The last part of the questionnaire checking phase would be whether the questionnaire is answered by someone who does not qualify for participation. So for example, you have asked a questionnaire to be filled by the head of the household, but for example, you find out that it has been filled not by the head of the household, not either by the the husband or the wife in the family, but it has been filled by someone else, then in that case, should you consider the response? Because what happens is, although you have got a response, but it is not the response of the targeted respondent, the sample element, right? So this is something that you need to decide to find out the authenticity of the responses received, because any kind of contamination in the responses, either not from the actual person or something which is not the views of the targeted respondent, that could contribute to the error in the study. All right. So now what do you need to do when you are looking at the data preparation process as part of the editing, having check the questionnaire and the data collection instrument? There are certain things that you need to do, which is to deal with the treatment of unsatisfactory results. So you may have to return back to the field. The questionnaires which have unsatisfactory responses may be returned to the field, where the interviewers recontact the respondents. And that's why I said the contactability of the people who have answered your questionnaire is very important. So definitely, as part of the questions that are required to be put in a questionnaire, do ensure that you keep at least a field or two for capturing the email ID first and the mobile number of a person or a contact number of a person. But you need to give a clear assurance in the questionnaire itself. If you're going to send the questionnaire for people to answer on their own, there should be a line or two mentioning why you are using the questionnaire, and give them the confidence of the confidentiality that you as a researcher will keep regarding the private data of the respondents, which is the contactability data, email IDs, the mobile numbers, or for example, things that they're answering regarding their age or income and other things. So you have to explicitly state a declaration of keeping the data confidential, and the data that the respondents are going to give to you on the questionnaire as responses will only be used for the purposes of research and will not be used for any other commercial purpose, which is that you're not going to create a database of those respondents and their data and sell it to someone else, a third party, for money. This is one of the reasons why people don't want to give their contact details. But please understand, as researchers or as somebody who going forward, supposing you have to evaluate the research work done by a third party, a research organization, how do you ensure that you can check the veracity, the credibility of the research work done, you need to examine the data. Data collected from whom, where, when, how, right? You will definitely, as a professional, not feel comfortable if you were given to understand that the data is fudged, it is fake, right? Fake data is not going to give any credibility to the research. So you want genuine data, you want real data, you want truthful data, whatever the data is, right? So it is important to check the veracity of the data. And the way the researcher and the research organization can prove their credibility is by ensuring that they have the necessary means or the necessary details to be provided to people, either the sponsors of the research or to anybody who wants to examine the truthfulness of the research. The details can be provided about from whom the data has been collected, when it was collected, how it was collected, and the manner in which it was collected, that it was not forced, no coercion, it was a free will, it was based on free will. So all these things will require, number one, the contactability of the respondents in case a respondent has been used for the research, right? So returning to the field, if you see the first point on your screen, returning to the field will only be possible when you are able to recontact the respondents in case you want them to complete the questionnaire, which may have been left incomplete for some reason. The second thing that you need to remember about editing and the treatment of unsatisfactory results would be assigning missing values. So if returning the questionnaires to the field is not feasible, the editor may ask missing values to unsatisfactory responses. So in case it is found that you cannot return back to the field and re-administer the questionnaire to the respondent for whatever reason, right? Then you should have, as a researcher, you should have the necessary way to code for missing responses or unsatisfactory responses. Like I said, if you have 5 categories of income groups, your number for coding will be anywhere from 1 to 5. So if you want to now code for a situation where the income question has not been answered by the respondent, how do you code it? You can't give 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 on your own. You should not do that, right? Because the respondent has not answered. So what should you do? You have to put a different code which is different from the 5 categories, right? Now, can I ask you a question to all of you? What kind of code can you put in for this situation where you want to put in the answers, the fact that the respondent did not answer any of 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, what code will you put in order to indicate that this particular question was not answered? You can either put a 0, or you can put a 9, or you can put 99. This code 99, wherever you will include, it would have to have some uniform meaningfulness for you. So if anywhere the numeral 99 is found, or only 9 is found, or only 0 is found, depending on what code rule you have established, it should indicate that it is a missing response. So you could have something like this. You could have a code 0 given to those answer responses which don't have any kind of answers from the respondent. And you could have a code of 9 to indicate that the answer was given, but it was ticked too many times. So this particular question, the respondent should have ticked only one option, one choice out of the multiple choice, but he has ticked 2 or 3. So in this case, he has responded. It is not that there is no response, but the response is not satisfactory. So in order to indicate that, so which means what? It is not a non-response, but it is a wrong response. You will have to give a different code for that, and you perhaps could use something like 99 to indicate the code for wrong responses or unsatisfactory responses. Now, what is the third and the last option for editing? You could discard unsatisfactory respondents' questionnaire responses. So in this response, what happens? Respondents with unsatisfactory responses are simply discarded, the case-wise deletion. All right. So when you do the coding, certain things which you need to keep in mind is to have the understanding of what is a code. So coding means what? Assigning a code, which is usually a number, a symbol, which is attached to the different response options. Coding the questions, you will have to have fixed field codes, which means a number of records for each of the respondent, and the data should be similar. So it should be the code which will be used for all the data that is collected, and standard code should be used. And then you should have the coding of the structured question which is relatively easily done than what you can do for open-ended question. Open-ended questions, you cannot do any coding, but you have to base it on analysis of the keywords or the kind of sentiment that is coming out. So in questions that have a large number of answer options, each possible response option should be given a different kind of a code. All right. So the coding aspect, you can have a look at that. And that is how I showed you in the previous class yesterday, that you have a separate sheet in the worksheet where you keep the list of the codes. Tomorrow in the class, I will show you, or even in the videos, you will see SPSS also has inbuilt in its worksheet a separate sheet in which the codes for the response options are inherently done before SPSS takes the data for analysis. So in earlier times, there used to be code book that we used to keep for each of the research projects that we used to have, and for different type of questions or the questionnaires, we used to have different coding books, or the code books used to be there. For example, if you recall the Crocin case study, that is the reason why we do case studies in class. If you recall the Crocin case study, there were 3 types of questionnaires which were used. If you remember, questionnaire for the consumers, questionnaire for the doctors, and questionnaire for the chemists, right? So therefore, what happens is 3 sets of questionnaire for 3 different kinds of people. These 3 sets of questionnaires had 3 different sets of questions altogether. So if you have to do a coding for each of the type of questionnaire, the coding instruction will be different. So in such a case, you will need to have the coding sheet done separately for 3 sets of questionnaire. All right. So what do you mention there? These are all the things: the column number, record number, what is a variable number, all of that. Nowadays, it is all done by soft copies and electronic methods. So manually, it is not done anymore. So coding of the questionnaires, you have seen practically in class, which we did yesterday. And data cleaning is something that we need to do in order to check that data which has been captured in the responses are actually within the range and do not have any kind of extreme values, or if there are, we need to see that and we will deal with it. Now, when we talk about the treating of the missing responses, as I was telling you, that missing responses, you can assign a code and make sure that that is different from a non-response. All right. And case-wise deletion and pair-wise deletion. Case-wise deletion is when respondents' data with any missing responses, the entire case itself or the entire respondent is actually deleted from the data collected. But in this case, what happens is, if you deal with this fact that if there is any response which is left unresponded by the respondent, you're not going to count that particular respondent's data, then it could lead to a substantial reduction in the sample size. If there's a possibility, because you can't force people to answer all the questions. So if you resort to this case-wise deletion, which is basically respondents with any missing responses are totally deleted from the data collected for the analysis, then you have a case-wise deletion coming into effect. The other better method would be pair-wise deletion, which means instead of discarding any case which has any missing value, you just, in case you're analyzing a particular question and that particular question has not been answered by a respondent, for that particular analysis, you discount that particular respondent. So it might be that out of a sample size of 300, for example, one person has not answered a particular question. If you're doing an analysis of that particular question, for that particular analysis, instead of 300 respondents for that, you will take out that one respondent who did not answer that question. So the total sample size for that would effectively be 299. All right. So what are the different types of analysis? Therefore, let us look at a few of these analysis so that it helps you understand why we need to have different types of bivariate, multivariate analysis and all of that. So there could be correlational analysis, which is basically trying to understand if there's a correlation or a joint variation of 2 or more variables to determine the amount of correlation between variables. So you need to understand whether something is related to something. Does income affect people's buying behavior? Does the qualification of people affect the kind of job aspirations that they have? So these are kind of correlational analysis that you can do to find out if some kind of variable is actually correlated with something else. Causal analysis, please remember what I've highlighted on the screen. Yellow, the second yellow highlighted portion, it is not casual, it is causal, cause and effect. All right. So causal analysis is concerned with the study of how one or more variables affect changes in another variable. So is it actually having a cause and effect relationship, which you can basically find out with experimental methods. So that is how the data collection perhaps could be done. So what are the primary methods of data collection? You have survey, observation, experiments, right? And any other qualitative method. So if you're not using a survey, but you are using an experiment to find out if something is affecting something or something is causing something. So this cause and effect analysis actually can be understood or analyzed in the causal analysis. So a study of functional relationships between two or more variables. And further, what happens is when you have a causal analysis explored, you can also take that further into finding out if you can build a kind of a forecasting thing or kind of a regression analysis can be built, wherein you can try to find out which all are the variables which cause an influence on the dependent variable. All right, so causal analysis is mostly done in social studies with the understanding that there could be some amount of challenge which is there, because in a social science stream or in something like management, unlike physics, chemistry, or biology, you can't have very sacrosanct methods of understanding the cause and effect. So dealing with human beings, dealing with society, dealing with the social system, there can be so many variables which are actually impacting the phenomenon which you are trying to study. But given the constraint, you really take few into account and you say that yes, within the given constraint, that so many things could be variable, so many things could be non-deterministic, stochastic in nature. We still feel that these are certain causal variables which is affecting a dependent variable, right? So within the phenomena that you want to study, you could as a researcher take into account the secondary data, the kind of data that you get from other research, and then say that these are certain independent variables which perhaps are likely to cause an impact or a change in the dependent variable. All right. So when you're doing a data analysis, certain things that you need to keep in mind is again the fact that research is very systematic and objective in nature. So what does it mean by systematic and objective? Please have a look at the screen, dear students. Selecting a data analysis strategy would depend on, first and foremost, is the preceding steps of the business research. So what are the steps of business research? The first step of business research is understanding the research problem, right? You have approached the problem. You try to find the secondary data, which is the second step, or do a review of literature. Third step of the research process would be research design, right? Wherein you determine the type of research that you're going to do, the methodology, all of that, sampling, all of that. Next step after research design would be to collect the data collection. After the data collection stage is the data analysis stage, data analysis and interpretation. And the last stage of the research process is the reporting stage, right? So what you see on the screen now, data analysis strategy would begin with the first set of box on the top of the hierarchy. So earlier steps, 1, 2, and 3 of the business research process. Next would be to know the characteristics of the data. What type of data are you dealing with? Qualitative, quantitative, measurement scales, nominal, ordinal, interval, ratio. What type of scales, what type of measurement scales are you using? Are you dealing with qualitative data, quantitative data? Are you dealing with open-ended questions or closed-ended questions, structured questions, unstructured questions? How are you going to collect the data? Are you going to, administer different types of questions in the same questionnaire? All of these. Then you need to understand the third step in the process that you're seeing on the screen, which is the properties of the statistical techniques. So properties of statistical techniques would mean, depending on the type of data that you are using or the scale that you're using, you can subject that particular data to a particular type of analysis, right? So for example, if you're using a nominal scale and you have asked the gender of a person, first code is male, 1 male, 2 female. Now you can't do an average of this, right? It's meaningless, but you can do categorization of the data. So there are certain analysis that you can do with nominal scale data, like chi-square, you can do all of that. Now, if you're combining the variables, but if you're doing something like Likert scale, using Likert scale to collect data, then you can do summation of the scores of that scale. We will see that in a little while. So properties of the statistical techniques that you want to use, you want to find out what is the kind of confidence level that you want to use, what is the kind of precision level that you want to use, what is the kind of coefficients that you want to have. All of these things you have to understand the statistical techniques. And that leads to the next step, which is to understand the background and philosophy of the researcher. What is the background from which the researcher is hailing? Social sciences using different type of domain knowledge in the research. So you need to understand what is the philosophy behind that. Are you going to do a kind of analysis based on the entire phenomenon, taking into account the qualitative quantitative aspect, and then you decide what is the data analysis strategy. So the data analysis strategy is again very, very systematically and objectively done, taking into account the preceding steps of the research, understanding the different data characteristics, understanding the different statistical techniques that can be used given the type of data that is going to be collected, and understanding for what purpose the researcher is actually doing the the data analysis. The qualitative data analysis will reveal something which is exploratory in nature and can be taken as an input for the conclusive part of the research work, which can be quantitative in nature. The researcher himself or herself may not be well versed in quantitative techniques, but can take the help of quantitative methods, professionals, and take a look at that. Or on the other hand, a person or a researcher might be very quantitatively very proficient, but is not qualitatively proficient. So might have to take the help of psychologists, sociologists, and anthropologists to take their help in understanding qualitative data that is coming in. And that will determine the data analysis strategy. So what are the three types of analysis? The three types of analysis are as follows. You have univariate analysis, bivariate analysis, and multivariate analysis, right? Can you give me an example of a univariate analysis? Univariate analysis is where you take one variable at a time and analyze it. So you take gender, you collected 500 responses from people, and then out of 500, 250 were male and 250 were female. So how much is the split? 50%. So if you're doing analysis with one question at a time in your questionnaire, one variable at a time, that is univariate analysis. So examination of the distribution of cases on only one variable at a time, right? So anything, it would be weight of college students you've asked, or income of a person, all of that. So only the income part of the questionnaire is dealt with one at a time. What is a bivariate analysis? Bivariate analysis is the examination of two variables simultaneously. So you can examine like a cross tabulation. We will see some examples in a little while. So when you're doing a cross tabulation, a tabular form, so it is two variables at a time. So it could be something like gender and weight, or say gender and income of a person. So you could have rows of gender and you can have columns of income, and you want to find out how many people are there for male on say first category of income, second category of income, third category of income, and like that. Multivariate analysis on the other end is the examination of more than two variables, right? So it's actually basically three and more variables together. When you are analyzing, it is multivariate analysis. So bivariate analysis was examining two variables at a time, and multivariate analysis would be dealing with more than two variables at a time. That is what primarily the discriminant analysis or logit analysis or factor analysis, cluster analysis, multidimensional scaling, they deal with more than two variables at a time, right? So you have three types of analysis. So sophisticated analysis that will have to be done for research work will have to deal with multiple variables at a time. So you're analyzing multiple variables at a time, definitely more than two. So we are going to look at most of the multivariate analysis, and examples of multivariate analysis is what I told you. Okay, so these are some of the extra materials that I have given across to you in the LMS, in the learning material. So you can go through that. And we will look at some of these terms like hypothesis and all that when we see the case studies. All right. So some of the multivariate analysis which are going to be of importance generally in any research work would primarily be either the multiple regression analysis, multiple discriminant analysis, and we have ANOVA also. So I will highlight a few of these ANOVA techniques as well so that you can use it further going forward. Now, the next part of the screen is something to do with the academic part of your learning. So as part of your academic program, you will have to appear for exams. So you need to be prepared with what are some of the conceptual things, like, for example, what do you understand by univariate analysis, bivariate analysis, multivariate analysis, examples. And of course, the application you will learn with the case studies that we'll be doing in the class using the data that we are collecting. All right, or using some of the data mentioned in the cases. And you will be using those case data. You will actually be entering the data in the software and you will actually try to perform the analysis. The next thing what you're seeing on the screen is to understand univariate data and bivariate data. Again, Univariate means dealing with one variable. Bivariate would mean dealing with two variables. So basically data which involves single variable is univariate data, and you're just analyzing the trends or the pattern in that particular variable, right? So the maximum that you can do is, for example, if you're dealing with age and all, you can think about the average age, you can think about some dispersion in the age that has been collected, you can think about standard deviation. So some of these, and the visual representation of such data would be like bar graph, histograms, pie charts, line graph, the graphical representation of that. Bivariate data, on the other hand, is data which involves two variables, like bivariate analysis. And when you're dealing with two variables, you can actually try to explore any kind of causal relationship between the variables to find out which is the causal variable to cause an effect on the other variable. So trying to identify which is the independent and the dependent variable. Now, how do you identify that? You can do the identification basis the understanding in the domain, understanding the secondary data, doing review of literature, all of that. The other thing that you can do with bivariate data is to use the two sets of data to understand which is actually correlated with which one. All right, so it would involve relationships, comparisons, causes, explanation. So the result would actually be shown. The bivariate data, most of the time, the basic way in which we see the data is in the form of a cross tabulation. And of course, in the form of a cross tabulation, when you want to also depict it in visual forms, it is also possible. The other thing that you need to remember in data analysis is the fact that it is an inferential analysis, especially when you're using sample, measuring certain things in a sample, which is statistics. So inferential analysis is concerned with the various tests of significance for testing hypothesis in order to determine with what validity the data can be said to indicate some conclusion or conclusions about the population. All right, so it is concerned with the fact that the estimation of population values. So normally the parameters in a population, if you are not able to study the population, do a census or have a complete understanding of the population, normally we will use a sample, few members out of the population. So when we are measuring certain characteristic in the sample, that is in the form of statistics. So statistical inference means we try to aim to see that the way in which the sample is drawn, number one, should be very unbiased and probabilistically, and the measures of the sample must be can be inferentially drawn to the population, which means that we can conveniently say, based on the way in which the sample was drawn and the measurements were done, that whatever we have seen as the outcome in the sample, or whatever we see as the interpretation or data analysis from the sample, is actually what is prevailing in the population. That is your inferential analysis. Right? So it is mainly on the basis of inferential analysis that the task of interpretation, what is interpretation? Task of drawing inferences, conclusion is performed. So once you do the data analysis, the purpose of the data analysis is to infer something about what is happening, not just in the sample, but in the population. And that's why and how, if you remember business statistics, hypothesis testing comes in. So hypothesis is not something that you test only for the sample population. It is actually done for understanding whether the phenomenon exists in the population or not. So the next thing which you need to determine, and I think this will provide the stage for you to understand how you're going to deal with the data, choosing the statistical technique. So first thing to understand in choosing the statistical technique is, again, it's a process. It is again a stepwise aspect. You need to perhaps understand very clearly that at this stage your research questions will be used, or the hypothesis will be called in. You need to understand how many variables are there in the question, whether you want to do a univariate analysis, bivariate or multivariate analysis. If you are doing an univariate analysis, how many levels of the variables are there? For example, gender is measured in 2 categories, or income is measured in 5, or something else is measured in multiple categories. So you choose a univariate method of analysis and you choose the relevant descriptive statistics. Is it a mean? Is it a median, mode, standard deviation? What is it? If it is bivariate, it can be chi-square, it can be something else. All right, so there can be different ways that you can analyze the data. So what you see on the screen is, again, univariate analysis, which can have descriptive statistics and which can have inferential statistics, right? So you can go in for understanding whether there is some mean, some median, some mode, measures of central tendency that can be done with it. You can, but please remember, for example, if you're dealing with nominal scale data, like I said, one is male and 2 is coded for female, then you can't do mean, right? Mean, if you find out, is like 1.5. Or does it mean anything for gender? No. So that kind of analysis should not be done for that kind of a question, right? But if you are collecting things like, see, amount of income earned by a person every month, and you collect it for 100 people, you can do a mean of that. All right, you can do a median of that, find out the median. You can also find the most commonly occurring values. So you need to understand which type of measures of central tendency is applicable for a variable and which is not meaningful for a variable. Then you can also deal with measures of dispersions like range, variance, standard deviation. I think all of these terms are very familiar to all of you because you've done business statistics before this semester also, right? And the other inferential statistics that we tend to use would be z-test, t-test, chi-square test, right? All of you are familiar. You can read up a portion of that. So chi-square test can be used for nominal scale variables also to test significance of association. So next set of the slides are mainly to kind of just a recall or a recap of what is mean, median, okay, mode and all that, and where you can do it, the skewness or kurtosis if it is required. And then let us proceed into understanding how at least the bivariate ones, bivariate and multivariate, begin, which is the frequency distribution, cross tabulation, and hypothesis testing. So supposing you have this kind of a data which is similar to the data that you have collected. Supposing you have certain respondents, say about 30 respondents, and then some data has been collected about their age, again coded with 1 and 2, and their familiarity towards the internet, usage of internet, all right, attitude towards internet. These are all scale variables. So from the third column onwards, it is a scale variable. So you're asking some people to tell whether they are male or female, how familiar they are about the internet on a scale of 1 to 7, about their usage in hours, number of hours. So what you see here, 14.00 is 14 hours, 2.00, so like that. Then the other questions asked is attitude towards internet on a scale of 1 to 7. If you remember the Ohio lottery case, so scale questions were there on a scale of 1 to 7. Likert scale normally 5 point, but 7 point also can be done. So attitude towards technology, that is again on a 1 to 7 kind of a scale where people have answered usage of internet for shopping and banking purpose. All right. Now, given this, what can happen is you can build a frequency distribution of any variable. For example, if you look at the previous one, you can build a frequency distribution for internet usage, right? You can build histograms and bar charts based on that, right? So in fact, tomorrow's class also, you can try and do that. You would have done that in Excel anyway, because you do have business analytics as a course also. So frequency distribution is one form of trying to make a table out of that. You could also be visually representing that in the form of a histogram or a bar graph or a pie chart, as the case may be. And you could then look at the statistical part of testing for hypothesis, which is the hypothesis testing, the null hypothesis H sub 0, and the alternate hypothesis, which is H sub 1. So in the hypothesis testing, again, there are several steps. One is you need to formulate what is your null hypothesis, which would mean that there are two variables, which in ideal cases would be there is no relationship between one and the other. The alternate hypothesis would mean something is actually affecting the other one. All right. So hypothesis testing, kindly recall your statistics class again. So you need to select the appropriate test for hypothesis, choose the level of significance. Normally our 95% level is normally chosen as, the confidence level, or say 99% also, but normally most of the time it is 95% at 5% level of confidence, and collect the data, calculate the test statistics. You either can do it in the form of collecting the critical values through that statistical table, or from the statistical software itself, we get it in the form of the p-values. So we can get the probability of committing a type 1 error. Type 1 error typically would be something wherein you set a limit. So the p-value can range anywhere from 0 to 0.05 or from 0 to 0.01, if that is how you want it. Basis the p-value, which is the alpha level, significance level, you hypothesis. If the null hypothesis is rejected, normally the automatically the alternate hypothesis is accepted. I will show it to you also when we deal with the particular cases during the multivariate analysis. So hypothesis testing will be done. based on the p-values, accept the null hypothesis or reject the null hypothesis. If the null hypothesis is rejected, automatically the alternate hypothesis is accepted and a marketing research conclusion or a business research conclusion is done. So second thing which you need to understand is the type 1 error. So type 1 error is typically when the sample results lead to the rejection of a null hypothesis when it is perhaps not true, when it is false. So the probability of type 1 error is called the level of significance indicated with the letter alpha. All right, type 2 error is occurring when based on the sample results a null hypothesis is not rejected when it is in fact false. So there are cases wherein you need to account for type 1 and type 2 errors. Mostly the type 1 error, the level of significance p-value is normally given out by the software. So based on that, you can select the p-value and within the limit, if it is within 0.05, then you can conveniently say that the chance of committing a type 1 error is less, and so you could reject the null hypothesis and go for the alternate hypothesis. If it is more than 0.05, then we can have a high level of probability of committing a type 1 error and hence cannot reject the null hypothesis. All right, so cross tabulation is normally when you are trying to tabulate two variables together. So this is an example of a cross tabulation that you can see, which most of you would have done. So this is an example of the data taken with gender and internet usage. All right, so this is something that you can use with two variables. So what are the two variables used here? Gender as well as internet usage. So you can combine any of the two variables to find out the cross tabulation if it makes any kind of sense. So what is the sense possibly coming out of this table? Perhaps the researcher wants to find out if there is any difference in internet usage among men and women, boys and girls. All right. So you could be using two variables in cross tabulation based on some kind of meaningfulness. So you might want to understand the demographic, understanding of how the demographic aspect of gender plays out in internet usage. Therefore, these two variables have been used. So similar such decisions can be taken by people to understand how they want to represent the data. So what you see here is again cross tabulation, but here it is in the form of percentage. What is the difference between this table and the previous table? Let us quickly have a look at the previous table. The previous table was given in form of numbers, which is not really that very easy to understand because the person who's reading that really needs to have the capability to compute some meaningfulness out of it. So supposing 5 men are having light usage out of a total of 15 men in the population. So you need to calculate and find out. Otherwise, this 5 and 10 and 15 doesn't make too much of sense. You can understand these are numbers. But on the other hand, if you look at this particular table, what do you see? It is in the form of percentage. What is good about the percentage? It helps you to understand the data a little bit more than what you would have understood had you not got the percentage. So what does it show here? What do you make out of this? Can somebody put in the chat box? What is the percentage of women having light internet usage? Female, gender, light usage. Some percentages mentioned here. Very good. Excellent, Banu Prakash. 66.7% women who have expressed light usage. Excellent, Pranita. Thank you so much. Thank you, Siddharth. Very good. Right. And on the other hand, light usage of internet by men, what percentage? What percentage? Light internet usage by men. Excellent there again, Nisarga, Siddharth, Pranita, right? Banu Prakash, 33.3%, right? So this is an example of cross-tabulating the data. It is a method of using. Now, what type of analysis is this? Can you please tell me, dear students, is it a univariate or a bivariate analysis? Is it a univariate or a bivariate? Univariate would mean one variable at a time. Bivariate is two variables at a time. So here, what are the variables? Gender is a variable, internet usage is a variable. So two variables are taken. So what kind of analysis is this? Excellent, Sudarshan. Thank you so much Siddharth, bivariate. Yes, it is a bivariate analysis. Very good. Excellent. Thank you so much for your attention. Right? So you can have many types of these bivariate analysis. Now, can you also recall, can you also please appreciate at this point of time that this is why when you use even Google Forms, the kind of analysis you got last time, you saw you had got some pie charts, you got some representation for each question that you had given in your questionnaire. So one question at a time, the software analyzed for you and gave out some visual representation. So one question at a time, what type of analysis did you get in that Google Forms? From the Google Forms immediately that you have, some of you have put on the LMS also. Was that univariate or bivariate? One variable at a time. So you got how many people have answered? Yes, very good. Thank you, Nisarga. Thank you. It is univariate. So you can understand. Thank you, Sudarshan. Yeah, so whatever you got from the Google Forms immediate analysis was univariate in nature. All right. So what you need to understand is research analysis has to go beyond univariate and in fact beyond bivariate also. Right. So it will be multivariate in nature. That is why we need to use software, because not all the time we can do all the calculations by hand, and we don't need to do the calculations by hand. And please understand here, one thing I also need to really tell all of you, please understand, you don't have to be worried about statistics if that is not your forte. Statistics will be used in research to help you as a manager to interpret certain things, right? And all of you, and I mean all of you, each one of you will become very comfortable in interpreting the data without any kind of problem. The only thing you have to keep in mind is, please take away any mind block that you have, which is, oh my God, I have to do hypothesis testing, I have to do chi-square, I have to do this, I have to do that. That is all statistics. Can I do this? It is very complex. Don't think like that. All right, please don't think like that, because we're not going to do any manual calculation whatsoever. We are only going to use the software. As of now, be comfortable with using the software output and understand the main job that you all have is to understand how to interpret the output. That is the first job. The other job that you have is to know which type of analytical tool to use when. So it's just like in a, you know, in a kitchen, to cook any food, you just need to know. If you want to prepare a sweet dish, there are certain ingredients you will use, among which sugar is going to be there, something else is going to be there. If you want to prepare something which is very, you know, hot and sour, or which is something very spicy, then you know you're not going to put certain things. So you need to know how or what are the ingredients you have with you. So you should know the different kinds of tools and techniques and know which technique to use when. The software you will use to order them to give you the output from that technique. When the output comes in front of you, you should be able to interpret that. But in no place, you're not going to do any manual calculation for chi-square. You will not do any manual calculation for any correlation or coefficients or nothing. Everything will come from the software. But you should know which analytical technique to use when. All right. These are again examples of multivariate done on a cross tabulation, 3 variables, types of variables, all of that. All right, so these are some examples which have been given to all of you. You can go through it, and you can also think about how from the questions that you have created in your questionnaire, you can now start thinking, how can you do various kinds of bivariate cross tabulation and see if any meaningfulness comes out of it. And having known this, what happens is now you are in a state to understand that if I'm going to do a research work, actual research work, I should know what type of analysis I'm going to do, what type of inference perhaps I will be able to get from such analysis, and then think of what type of questions I should ask. So while you are going through the course now, like you went through unit 1, unit 2, unit 3, 4, now you're in the 5th unit. Now, when you're in the 5th unit, you will understand, you will get exposed to some of these techniques. You have some of these techniques exposure anyway from business statistics. But right now, you will be able to do that. Just give me a moment. You'll be able to do that based on the fact that these techniques are going to help you to give you a view, a futuristic view that such techniques are available. So if I have to use these techniques, I should have that kind of a data collection done. If I need to use a certain factor analysis, I must have interval scale data. If I want to use chi-square analysis, I must have nominal scale data. All right. So these are the things, understanding that you need to have with you so that you understand what type of analytical techniques to be used for what type of data. So going ahead, please have a look at the reference material. It is already uploaded on the LMS. Tomorrow, what you will do is you will bring across some of the bivariate combinations from the data that you have collected. Combine anything, gender with perhaps social media usage, gender with employer brands, gender with something else, income group with something else, right? So you can do this and you can make tables out of that in Excel itself. So Excel, you have a working knowledge, right? So you can do that and find out. So these are the basic ones. Then we will look at the case study of, which I will send across today, case studies of factor analysis, case studies of cluster analysis, and you will see that what kind of data has been used there. Interval scale data is used, and then we will see how that is used in SPSS to determine the factor and the cluster analysis output. All right, so with this, I think we will conclude today's session. If there is any doubt, you can ask me now. So what you basically need to do today, go through the videos that I'll be that I have already put up on the LMS. There are videos about how to do the data entry in SPSS, how to do the data entry or coding in Excel. If you have not gone through it already, do that, get it prepared, and tomorrow in class we will look at some of the multivariate techniques to view further on. All right, I will be sending, for example, this one, the, one second, just give me a moment. The cases that I will be sending across to you will have the case study and the solution also. All right, the case I will send across will have the case study and the solution, so that it is easy for all of you to see what is the question in the case study and what is the analysis. All right, so if possible, please come to the class after doing a pre-reading of the case study so that you can understand how it is going to work. All right, the solutions are also there in the case study as well. All right, so if there is no other doubt, no question,